Welcome to this Decoding Digital Media webinar brought to you by Media Impact International in partnership with Faith Tech. I'm your host, Nachi Lazarus, and today we are talking about artificial intelligence, AI in ministry. And as most of you know, this is a topic that follows you wherever you go these days. You know, it's on the news, it's on social media, it's on every single platform that you go to. Everybody's talking about AI. So that is why what we are going to discuss today is absolutely important. We have two guests who are going to open your mind to new possibilities and new ways of thinking about AI. I can't wait to get started. First, I want to introduce our guest, Kenny Jang. Kenny is editor-in-chief at churchtechtoday.com. He's also the founder of AI for churchleaders.com, which is a Facebook group for church leaders who are interested in AI. Definitely something you want to check out. Kenny is a certified story brand copyright guide and founder of Big Click Syndicate, which is a strategic marketing advisory firm helping Christian leaders build marketing engines that work. Kenny was also an online church pastor before entering the media space. Our next guest is Nick Runyon from the MII team, who has held multiple C-level titles in both industry and ministry organizations focused on leveraging technology to create human connections. Most recently, Nick led a 300-person software company through a successful turnaround as a CEO by navigating multiple funding rounds. He's also been an executive director of CV, Christian Vision North America. He's been the CEO and director of outreach for GMO, Global Media Outreach. He's a long-time MII partner, and he has trained over 100 ministries in improving evangelism efforts through the use of digital media and follow-up platforms. Just one more thing before I dive into my interview and discussions with these two amazing experts, that is Q&A. Anytime during this webinar, you can click on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and you can ask your questions. Highly encourage you to ask your questions. I'm sure a topic like AI, you will have lots of questions, but don't hold back. Just ask your questions, give us your comments, give us your feedback. One of the experts will be live answering your questions as we move along. Now let's get into our discussions with Kenny and Nick about AI in ministry. Kenny and Nick, welcome to Decoding Digital Media Show. Kenny, welcome to the show for the first time.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. Really excited for today's session.
Great to have you here, my friend. And Nick, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, same. I'm happy to be here. We were all together at NRB in Orlando recently. That was fun to see you guys again. But this is okay too, virtually.
Not bad, considering that we are all spread across the world. Literally, I'm on the other side of the globe, so that's not bad. Great. What a great topic for us to discuss. And I know all three of us are passionate about this stuff and helping ministries. And so I can't wait to dive right in. But before we get into the topic, I gave a formal introduction of you guys before we started, but I want our audience to get to know you a little bit more. So I want you to share two things. One, a personal detail. Another is a professional detail. When I say detail, it could be something you're excited about, something that's happening right now, something that you would like our audience to know. So, Kenny, you go first.
Well, I am located in New Jersey, right outside of New York City in the United States. And I guess one of the personal details is I love going to Korea, which is the country of my heritage. As a Korean American, I grew up and I don't know the language. And so one of the things that I'm trying to plan with my wife is, hey, can we get up and live there for 6 months? Nachi, you're a world traveler, so this is old hat to you, but I would love to go, country to country, 3 months or 6 months at a time and just immersing myself in the cultures. And Korea is the first place I want to do it with.
Wow.
Professionally, I am in the digital ministry space. I run a agency that helps Christian nonprofits with communications and strategy and positioning. And then I run several ventures that help churches in particular. And this is all based on my experience being in ministry. I used to be a church online pastor and a media and innovation pastor. That's a little bit of how I know both you guys from the past, and I just love paying it forward and figuring out how we could do good for the kingdom.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I love about Kenny, which I didn't mention in the intro, is his curiosity. He's like curious as a kid and plays around with everything that's new and, all that amazing stuff. So I remember many, many months ago, both of us chatting about AI and how he's been playing
Yes.
around with it since then. That was one of the reasons when we thought of the topic, the first name that came to my mind was Kenny. So I'm so glad he was available. I can't wait to dive into this. Okay, Nick. Two details for our audience. I know most of them know you, but something new.
Yeah, well, it's summertime in Montana, and for a change, we don't have wildfire smoke this summer. That's all in New York and New Jersey. So sorry, Kenny, but Canada, it's burning right now. But I had 4 friends out. These are business leaders from all over the world that for the last 5 years, we've gotten together to either ski or fish in the winter. And so just hosted that week-long trip for those guys out here. So we did horseback riding and the whole thing. It was just such a good time of like reflection and reconnection. I'd encourage anybody, listening to, if you don't have a group like that, there are people in your life that are like this, that care deeply about you and will, hold you accountable, challenge you, uplift you. Find the time to make that happen. It's just so beneficial. I feel energized this week because of it. Professionally, we've done, my wife and I have done full-time ministry work for, it was about 12 or 13 year run there in digital media and digital ministry. But more recently I've gone back into the business world, and just earlier this year launched a new company. We closed a round of funding and off and running, some really good momentum for us. So we're excited about that over here.
How exciting. How exciting. Yeah, I did see those pictures of you on the horseback. I was like, who is this guy?
He's the Marlboro man. He's the rougher, right? The great outdoors.
And that fish, that big fish. Anyway.
Come and visit. I'll take you guys fishing.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much, guys. And I am excited about all that God is doing in all of our lives. I think it's a great time to be doing what we're doing and seeing God work in multiple ways. So very excited. Let's dive into AI. I just saw a post recently that said one of my goals is to get through social media without looking at one post about AI. So that was like yeah, good luck. And he's like, I couldn't live for like 5 minutes without looking at a post about AI. So that is how big this topic is. And that's why so many people have signed up for this webinar and they're watching us. And so let's start with the basics. So Kenny, you have played around with this right from the early days, and you have really gone deep now, and with all that you're doing with the summit and the work and the groups and all of that. So take us back to some foundations, Kenny. What did you learn when you started? What is AI? Give us like a simple definition, because most of our audience today are ministry leaders, nonprofit leaders. Some of them are just getting started. Some of them played around with it. So we've got all wide range of audience in front of us. So tell us, what is AI?
Yeah. So we've been living with AI, right? Whether you know it or not, it's almost like this disease that we've had. It's mostly been behind the scenes. And so whether you're using GPS to help you route a path through your city, or Google searches with autocorrect, or if you watch Netflix or any streaming device where there's a recommendation engine of what to watch next, right? So AI has been around us but mostly it's been in the background. And mostly it's crunching numbers and data to be the brains of the operation. And I would say things have changed this past year a little bit. And that's because this new category of AI, or it's not new, but new for the mass public and culture, is something called generative AI. And this Gen AI thing is actually very powerful. So what is it? At the end of the day, you can think of it this way. There's two components. There's machine learning, right? So this is what the big AI scientists have been doing, building these big brains and computers, algorithms that enable these machines to learn from data, predict data, make analysis, synthesize everything. It does all the powerful stuff. The thing that has changed is that a company called OpenAI in November of 22 released something called ChatGPT. And it basically takes machine learning and layers on top of it natural language processing. And this type of technology really helps change everything. And you no longer need to be a scientist in the lab coat or a PhD or right to be able to understand and work with the machines. Natural language processing allows us as humans, as the layperson, anybody in the workforce, to write something in plain language that we would be speaking. And I'm here in the States, English is our primary language, but AI talks multiple languages across the world, right? And so whatever your native language is, you can type it into the computer. It understands that, parses it out, figures out where your intent is, goes off and does its machine learning stuff, the brainiac stuff, and then comes back, and here's the kicker, it doesn't give you some like data set or code that you have to decipher and need a PhD for or anything like that. It comes back and converts it back into natural human language that you can have. And so you have a conversation with the machine. That's a big component of this. And because of that, that has changed the game of what it can and what it cannot do. Natural language processing is the thing that has changed it. Now, you've seen or heard probably of ChatGPT or these other tools. Basically, you type in text and it produces amazing text outputs for you. But what we're seeing now, because this is so new in terms of investment in the innovation technology, is that AI is becoming multimodal for what everybody is able to do. Now, that's a nerdy term. What do we mean by multimodal? It just means that you can put in text, you can put in images, you can put in audio, you can put in video, and the output now can be text, images, audio, video, multimodal. So I'll just give you a quick example of a demo I saw the other day. They had someone took a picture of their refrigerator open, right? So all the food in the refrigerator, and the AI was able to identify all the products and produce that was in the refrigerator picture, and then it helped the person make some sort of recipe for dinner, right? It understands what is in an image, puts it into the machine learning stuff, comes back and translates it back into something that is in a different mode. In that capacity was text. It could make a song for your dinner. It could make a video of a recipe tutorial potentially in the future. So multimodal is the thing that we are able to do right now with all this technology. That is a game changer. You're going to see rapid development over the next 6, 12, 18 months. We're here in 2023. This is a huge inflection point in the history of technology. I don't know if you remember what the inflection point means, but if I'm going to go back into your middle school and high school math class days, when you draw a curve on a graph, the inflection point means the shape of the curve all of a sudden changes. Something happened. Something happened to change the curve. And that's literally what's going on here. We are literally in history at a point that we're going to look back in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years later and say, wow, it was before AI and after AI, before generative AI, after generative AI. It has completely changed things. It is akin to the development of the internet. It is that big. And I think it's evoking for a lot of the innovators like us, right? We're talking about, it's evoking the real sense of wonder. The word wonder in English is just this awe, this childlike awe of things. And you see when we're talking to our peers in the industry, it really evokes this wonder. Wow, this is amazing. This exceeds our capacity for imagination. And I'll just say this for all our audiences to frame today's conversation. I will say there's so many times in our lives where our dreams are not big enough. God's dreams for us are bigger than what we have for ourselves. And this probably is one of those situations where God has the capacity to give us a gift in technology to do much more for the gospel than we ourselves imagine. And so I think that's the challenge of today is like, how can we look at this thing, appreciate it, be cautious, be sensitive, be responsible, but how can we tap into the real potential that God has given us in this technology?
I love it. I love it. And I love the way you connected it with our overall purpose as people that God has put in this world. And, one of the things I want to add before I go to Nick to ask of his thoughts about the definition of AI is redemption of time. Every time I think of AI, one of the things that excited me first, like you said, for the first time I used it, in Descript, I think that was the first time I used AI. And then I looked at generative AI in the early, version of ChatGPT, and it was a wow moment. And I said, one of the first thing that came to my mind was redemption of time. God is a redeemer, and he's given us this incredible tool that could redeem time. But there are other aspects to this, which we will get to in a minute. By the way, towards the end, we are going to talk about the other side of AI. Those of you are thinking, yeah, I've heard all of this. Let's talk about the other dimension. We are going to talk about that. But let me go to Nick. I want to get Nick's perspective on what is AI, Nick? What does it mean for our audience, especially? What is the definition of AI?
I think Kenny provided a great definition of it, with generative AI, with automation, machine learning, rather, and natural language processing. And, when I was at CV Global, we built on CV Outreach, we built a natural language processor. So a donor of mine from past ministry roles is a data scientist at MasterCard. He's the head of data science for their fraud division. And he, strong believer, we built a natural language model matched with machine learning to really crunch and process through the unstructured data of these hundreds of thousands of emails and messages and social media messaging that we got, every week, every month from people that were responding to the gospel. And it was fascinating because at the time it was this computer processing power allowed us to understand what's really going on in these conversations. And what we found was that the AI, and it's interesting, I refused to call it that at the time, and I'll talk about that in a second. But like the AI would really kind of tease out like, oh, there's this person saying like I don't have anybody to talk to. There's this person saying my friends aren't trustworthy. There's this person saying, I feel isolated. And our model would discover that there's a theme of loneliness throughout all of these things. So that, and I gave very basic and kind of obvious examples. I mean, you can imagine messages that are being received from this digital ministry. We got, 200, 300, 400 word messages. The machine would kind of parse all this out and understand, oh, there's loneliness that's a trend here. Well, at the same time, we saw that the Surgeon General had issued a report that said loneliness was an epidemic, and people are being isolated by their technology and their devices. So that allowed us to then take that learning, that understanding, and then begin to create content that would speak to the need for connection. So the definition that I think Kenny gave was a great one. The reason why I wouldn't call it AI at the time is because we were working with some people that were employed by Google. They were working in the Google AI lab, and they're talking about like next level. Like when you say artificial intelligence to like a true artificial intelligence data scientist, it's like, my little email reader is not AI. So one of the things that came out recently was Auto GPT. So, Kenny, you mentioned Chat GPT, but Auto GPT is like this internet connected and enabled device. The case study that I heard was, I want to go to Japan. I want to go ski in Japan next year. Hey, Auto GPT, find the cheapest rate for me because I'm cheap. I've got 5 kids, so I need to save some money, but I want an incredible experience, maximize my budget. And then it'll go out and not only find all of the answers for you, but literally book the trips and just send you confirmation numbers. So that's a true like automated artificial intelligence that I think is really interesting. But I'm excited to get to the other side of the conversation.
I know. I can see you're waiting for that.
Yeah.
Little teaser there. Yeah, so many interesting use cases of our of our world being changed because of this. That's probably why all the buzz. So if any of you audience are thinking, Why is everybody talking about AI? That's because it is something that is touching every single part of our life. Travel, food, as you heard from our guests, it's about food, fridge, travel, every single part of our life is going to be touched by it. But I want to get to the ministry side, because most of you are already starting to think, all right, tell me about ministry, tell me about media. I want to quickly jump in and give you one simple, proven way of starting with AI, getting started with AI. A very practical tip, a very simple tip. Every one of us can do it. Here it is. To start with AI, don't go looking for the next big AI tool. Look for AI within your existing tool. It's as simple as that. Let me say that again. Look for the word AI built into your existing software, existing tool, existing system that you're already using. For example, right? You drive a car. Now, in the days to come, every car will have AI built into it. In fact, cars already have AI built into it. Cars that automatically brake when you go hit a obstacle. That you don't have to hold the steering when you're in a traffic jam. The high end of that is self-driving car. But basically, what I'm saying is, you are not looking for AI made car. You are looking for a car with AI in it, right? So that is how you should approach generative AI as well. So look for AI within your tools. I'll give you a few examples. First is, the simplest example is Canva. So most of you listening to me use Canva. It's very popular in the church, ministry, nonprofit world, simply because Canva as a tool gives free nonprofit licenses, right? So I'll start with that as an example. So as an example, go to Canva and open it. And when you create an image in your text box, next time, just click on the text box and open the options. You will see this little star sparkly thing called AI. Just click on that. It will tell you, what do you want? Just type in there. For example, you can open the text box within Canva and type list or quote a Bible verse that talks about Jesus being the light of the world. And boom, see what happens. I'm telling you, here is a challenge, a practical, assignment for you right after this webinar is to go to Canva and try it. And even if you don't have an account, create an account. Canva has an amazing free account. Create it and try this for yourself, right? So you will be amazed at what AI can do when it is built into an existing tool with the context of that tool. Now, Canva being a design tool, the context is helping you design better. So they have, AI built into it to help you design an image, come up with an image, create a video, come up with the content that goes on top of the image, all of that stuff. This is the simplest way to get started. So if you've been wondering, how do I get started with AI? Here you have it. Start with your existing tool. Some of the other existing tools, I'll give you examples, are Facebook ads. Facebook ads has inbuilt AI tool to come up with ad copy. Now, because AI is AI, as you heard, it's intelligent, it's smart, it can do lots of things. It can come up with very good advertising campaign copy. So start with that. LinkedIn recently said they are coming up with AI built into their ad copy. Many task management tools have AI built into it. Google is going to have AI built into Google Docs, Google Sheets. So what I'm saying is, basically, do not look for AI app. There's nothing called an AI app. Of course, ChatGPT became popular because that's where it started. But the route is not for you to go looking for this next big AI tool. If you go to Instagram or any other, platform, there's so many videos about the next big AI tool. You should have this, and, download this. Well, all that is great. I'm not against them. I say, well, try them out if you have the time. If you want to check it out, that's fine. But the best way for you as a ministry to get started with AI in a very practical, simple sense is to start using AI within the tools that you're already using, like Google, Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, Canva, and so on. So that is what I wanted to share with you. So that way, you are not waiting in the line. You're starting get a sense of AI, but at the same time, it's regulated in some sense. It is filtered. It's kind of fenced within the purview of your existing tool. And also, when you do that, you will start experiencing the utility of the tool. You will start experiencing the utility of AI within that tool being magnified. So instead of creating a Google Doc, sitting and thinking about what to type in the Google Doc, if the AI assistant tells, if you just give it a line, it will start filling out initial content for you, and then that gives you a way to get started. So that's what I would say. So sit with your team and take a list of all the tools that you're already using, right? And see which of the tools have AI built into it. And I'm telling you, every single software, every single app will have AI built into it in the days to come. So some of the stuff that you're using may already have it, or some of them don't have it. Well, take a stock of it, and whichever ones have it, then start with that. So that's the simplest way. And here's a bonus tip. If you want to know another way to get started, is start by allocating one little project for AI enhancement. Right? I call it AI enhancement step for ministries. So take one project. For example, it could be your social media post, or it could be your small group ministry. Or just take one part of your ministry and say, we are going to explore different ways in which AI can enhance that part, so that you're not exposing your entire ministry to AI, but you're taking one sample, small piece of your ministry, and you are deploying AI into it. So if you're a media ministry, you could deploy AI into coming up with better ad campaigns. That could be the one project that you could deploy AI in. So similarly, depending on the type of your ministry, you can decide what is that one simple area where I can control what's going on, but at the same time, I can deploy AI and enhance it. And once you see that enhancement happen, you will be encouraged to take AI and start experimenting with various other parts of your ministry as well. That is what I wanted to share with you. Back to our guests. Kenny, what are some of the use cases of AI very specific to ministries? What can ministries look for either today or in the future? What are some of the things that's going to impact us that has AI underlying that technology?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I am coaching ministry teams in particular, what we try to do as a group, as a team, is really try to understand the strengths, pros and cons of the AI technology, right? It's not, it sounds like in the media, because the media and the news love hyping things up. It sounds like it solves everything, and it's like a single push button vending machine, right? You push a button, out comes a piece of candy, and it's ready to eat, and you're done. And that's obviously not the case, and with most technologies. So there's a couple of different categories of work that I think you can think of generative AI with respect to your ministry work. So the first one is communications. It is, because it starts with text, comes back with text, or it's multimodal, is definitely, the sweet spot is definitely communications, whether it's email, social media, newsletters, writing ads, doing anything that's communication related. This is something that is the sweet spot of AI. The next one is research. So, and this is the part where it doesn't get that much play in media, news, and social media. But this, I think, is even more powerful than the just prettying up your language, creating marketing documents, etc. Brainstorming, helping to input a whole bunch of content and quickly synthesizing and summarizing it, helping you to build new content, and then suggesting topics or structure or refining what you have. And then here's another one. If you're not up to speed on something, this is a great use of AI for pastoral care. There's negative ways to use it. This is one. If you are presented with somebody who has some sort of felt need where you're not trained in, you're not up to speed, you're not familiar with them. So for example, the church that I used to serve in had a special needs ministry. So there were teams that were trained in there, but not everyone was. And if a family with special needs kids came and started to come into our small group, or was part of our volunteer team, you could go to AI now and ask questions and say, hey, teach me as if I'm a beginner. Let me get up to speed on this topic. It could be about theological stuff, systematic theology. Not everyone has gone to seminary. You could actually use AI for research to help you get up to speed in different things. The next category is analysis and organizing, becoming strategic, data manipulation, really trying to figure out plans for things. So I just worked with the church. Summertime is coming. And so they have some summer events, vacation Bible school, some other types of family focused events during the summer. And so we asked the AI to create a project plan for us. We have 7 weeks left. We have 10 hours a week to work on this. What do we need to do in order to create that type of event? How do you create the volunteer spots, create volunteer training? You can do all that kind of stuff with AI now. And the last one is reorganizing content. You can actually just dump a lot of raw content data in there and ask it to come up with a better flow. So, for example, we were just hosting an event, and we need to create a website for it. And we had a bunch of speakers. We had about 40 speakers, and they all had different titles and themes. Now, we understood the patterns of why the tracks were organized, but outsiders didn't. And so we put all the tracks and titles into the AI, and we asked it, can you reformulate logical tracks for somebody who's new to this topic? And then can you order them in a progression that makes sense for someone who's learning this topic for something new? And so again, analysis and organizing, strategic decision-making is definitely something that it's good for. And the last one is just content improvement. Because AI, generative AI right now is trained on a huge portion of the internet, Wikipedia, all these databases, it has pattern recognition of what is actual best practice in terms of logic and arguments and building messaging that's clarified and reframing things so that you have perspective from different audiences. From a church perspective, this is a great tool. You might have either some content, curriculum, sermon, some piece of content, marketing materials that's written one way, and you might ask the AI, hey, I want to appeal to this type of persona or audience, right? So it might be, hey, I want to reframe this for youth, or I want to reframe this for people who just found out about Jesus and the Bible, or I want to reframe this for people who've never read the Bible. You might actually use this to brainstorm to see what type of things you can do to improve your content so it's more attractive, more engaging, more compelling for the audiences that you're trying to communicate with. So those are some categories, and there's just three buckets, I think, overall that you want to think about. AI is good for research, analysis, and helping you with content. Those are the three things. Content is the thing that gets played up, right? You've seen the demos of the social videos of, create me a song in the style of Bono and U2, and make it rhyme. You can do content, crazy fun things with content. But really, the power of AI that's coming to us is research, analysis, helping us with decision making, as well as the content. Here's one really helpful tip that I think has been working for a lot of church leaders that I've been coaching. And that is, you have to think of this generative AI tool, whether it's ChatGPT, Jasper, or any of the tools that we're going to talk about today. You really need to think about it, not as a push button vending machine where you push a button and out comes something that's done and finished. Think of it as a very new, young seminary student intern. If you can think of it as an assistant, that someone doesn't have the expertise that you have, that's very green, that's very new to it, but is capable, that's intelligent, and that has a really good attitude and will do whatever you assign it. That is the best way to do it, because think about how you treat an intern or a junior assistant worker. Basically, you're going to assign them a task. They'll go off and do it, come back and report to you. Is it great 100% of the time? No. But what do you typically do? You typically discuss it, redirect them, tell them to revise this portion, not that portion. You help them and mentor them to figure out how to go back and make it better. And then it's an iterative process, right? It's a conversation. These are called conversational chatbots for a reason. And so think of it as a seminary student intern helping you with your ministry work is a reframing and reposturing that actually helps the people that we've been working with get better results and better impact with the things that they're getting with the AI. So those are the things that you can do well. What are the things that you can't do? And I think this is the part where we're going to get to the interesting stuff today. And obviously, there's no humanity in AI. It doesn't think, it doesn't feel. In fact, the way generative AI works is that it is a language model. You might hear this term, large language model, LLM. It's a language model. It works with language. It scours the internet for language and things like that, content. It is not a fact engine. And so you'll hear the term hallucinations. ChatGPT has been in the news for many things where it comes back and says things to you with confidence, but it's actually totally wrong. And so you have to understand what generative AI is. Generative AI is a predictive language model, meaning all it does is assemble sentences or images or videos, etc., thinking about what is the next word in the sentence that's the most predictively the best choice. What would be the highest percentage? So you would think of things like peanut butter and jelly is a common phrase here in the United States. So if I said peanut butter to you, you would probably come back and say jelly. Or if there's common idioms that might not make sense. And again, in English, we say it's raining like cats and most native English speakers would say dogs. It's raining cats and dogs. Those are not thoughts. Those are things based on the machine learning that the AI looks at and does pattern recognition across the millions of data points to figure out what is predictably the next word that would come in that sentence. So it's stringing along sentences one word at a time. It's not thinking and creating thoughts and translating them into words. That means there's no humanity. And the net of that is it can't care, it can't think, it can't replace you as a pastor. So those are the three like overarching big buckets. I think we can drill down and have a discussion there. But those are some of the things that you can do and cannot do with AI. And again, it depends on where you want to go with this conversation. We could have a choose your own adventure today, Nachi, and talk about any ministry department or use case, etc. But we could definitely talk through those things. And again, here's the other thing. We're all learning together. This is all developing at breakneck speed. I like to say we measured in dog years. When I was a partner at a .com incubator, we used to measure innovation in dog years, meaning that in a single year, you have 7 leapfrogs, 7 generations of things, 7 iterations of things happening within the span of 12 months. And that's literally what's happening here today. And so if anyone comes to you and say they are the guru of AI or they're the expert, they know everything about AI, you need to run. You need to run.
And redirect them to Kenny.
Yeah.
We're learning together. I think, I used to be a church line pastor, and that's literally how we learned. And it's the same feeling. If you were a church online pastor, even today, if you're a church online pastor today, and you come out and say, this is the way to do church online, and this is the only way to you need to run, because everything's evolving. And the only way to get better is to meet other like-minded peers. And so I celebrate you, whoever, whatever room you're in, whatever peers whoever you're talking to about AI, you're doing the right thing. You are a leader and an innovator, and this is the way we have to learn together. We need to get connected, share experiences, share the wins and the losses of what works, what doesn't.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
For those who don't know, like we all know each other pretty well and joke. Did you see my Facebook post on your comment or on my comment on your post rather last night?
No, I didn't.
Kenny wrote a book on AI for church and ministry leaders. And I said, here's my new ChatGPT prompt, write a book in the voice of Kenny and, publish it on Amazon and lower the price by 5 cents lower than Kenny's book. I was waiting for your reaction, but I hadn't yet seen it. But I want to take us to the other side of that conversation. If you think back to 2008, so I had just left my head of marketing role and took a job with Global Media Outreach in Silicon Valley. I was traveling back and forth between the East Coast and Silicon Valley. The App Store, I had an iPhone. I had one of the first iPhones in Montana. I was living in Montana at the time. If you remember, you could only get it on AT&T. That was the only provider that used the iPhone. They didn't even sell them in Montana because we didn't have AT&T. If you look at a map from 2007 when the iPhone was released, there was coverage over the entire country except for Montana. So I went and visited my in-laws and I signed up for a plan there. 90 days later, AT&T emailed me and shut me off because they're like, 98% of your time is spent roaming and it's too expensive. So I'm an early adopter is my point of that whole thing. The App Store comes out, you get things like Maps, Apple Maps, Google Maps. And when I was in San Francisco, it was amazing because it was like the maps are so good here. If I was in Montana or even like in Orlando, where we were living at the time, the maps weren't good. Like you'd miss streets. So your earlier reference about GPS as AI, I think is really interesting. Then, about 3 years later, there's a New York Times author, I believe. I'm going from memory here. I think it was New York Times. He was traveling in Europe, and he requested from AT&T like his personally identifiable data. And there's this article that was published. Nachi, I'll find it, and we can post it in the notes here, and put up a slide. But it showed all of his travel around Europe with timestamps and like what trains he took. And it was a total invasion of privacy. This was the first like smartphone that I remember, the first smartphone use, a tool of convenience that led to a loss of liberty. And I think we have to look at that very carefully, especially in ministry context, where a lot of the people that are being served by MII are serving in, I mean, let's be honest, some very security concerned regions of the world, some tense situations. There's an active kind of battle against some of the ministry efforts that our viewers are participating in. What do we need to think about using AI, giving this data that could potentially be used in the future or maybe even today to censor the church, limit our ability to share the gospel? And just on that, I want to give this equation. And this is not an original thought. I'm stealing it from Dr. Yuval Harari, who wrote the book Sapiens. Have either of you read Sapiens? He gave a presentation at the World Economic Forum and gave this equation: B times C times D equals AHH. Well, like, what does that mean? The danger of artificial intelligence is stated in this equation. And by the way, the context, I should back up. He's talking about like hacking the human body. So what this means is biological knowledge multiplied with computing power multiplied with data equals the ability to hack humans. So throughout history, think of the Tower of Babel. I mean, like throughout all of history, go way back. Man has sought to make himself God. Pride is this great sin that alienates us from our Heavenly Father. We are literally talking about hacking the human body. And this equation, biological knowledge multiplied with computing power, multiplied with data, equals the ability to hack humans. So computing power and the data has never existed to be able to hack like the human body, literally like heal diseases. We've all heard about like Elon Musk's Neuralink, and you can make lame people walk again. You can make the blind see and the deaf hear. What's that sound like? So what do we need to be thinking? The data is supplied by consumers or by people, and the entry point for data supply are these tools of convenience. So how do we need to think about these AI tools of convenience in ministry use, knowing that we're supplying data that could eventually be used, matched with computing power, to hack proselytization, ministry, societies, cultures? What do we think about that?
Yeah, so I think it's really important. And I think one of the things that the era of social media has slowly but finally started to wake us up to is that you are the product, right? If something is free on a consumer level, that they need to make money somehow. And that means they're selling your behavior, your data, your life. And so there has been some pushback on that side, but there's this addiction to free, right? And it scales. One of the things that AI has is there's a bunch of meetings that these high level AI scientists, founders of these companies have had, and where they are flagging the dangers themselves, right? Like this AI technology is emergent. It is ahead of everybody. I was at a generative AI conference in Silicon Valley in February, and one of the guys that was working on GPT-3. So just to be nerdy for a second, OpenAI, the company that has ChatGPT, has this technology called GPT, and there's different generations. We're currently up to 4. We're looking for version 5. 3.5 just was before that. And so this guy worked
incredibly quickly, by the way. Like,
yes,
it's like every 30 days.
It's like Moore's law. It's like Intel chips speed has just gone up, right? And so what he said, he was on, I believe, between second and third. He used to be on the OpenAI team working on GPT-2, I believe, and the beginning of 3. And when it came out into the wild, he said one of the big aha moments. And I think the question that was offered to him was like, what surprised you? What's different about this technology versus other innovation fronts? And he gave this story is when they released it, again, it was text to text. You input text, you come out text. And it started to do this amazing stuff, right? It understood how to translate words from one language to another fluidly. It understood how to fix my grammar from passive English to active English, right? Active tense and all that kind of stuff. And the thing that surprised them was on Twitter, some guy posted, "Hey, I just started using this and it coded for me. It coded a website for me." And the surprising moment was the team that developed it had no idea that this thing could code. It literally didn't know the capability of what the machine could do. There is a colleague of ours that works for one of the big tech companies and is working in the verticals, and gave some insider information of that one of the projects that they were working on, the computer made a new language that was more efficient, right? Because at the end of the day, we have all these languages, but they were made by us, and we're not the most efficient, right? Just look at the English language. Anyone who's not native trying to learn the English language with all its exceptions thinks it's nuts. It's not an efficient way to speak. So the machine made some other language, and they had to back it out of the technology. This AI generation of AI is ahead of us. And one of the things he said was, we are now building things where we don't understand what it can do. And
it sounds like we don't understand what it's saying either.
Yeah, like absolutely. Absolutely.
What about this AI language that nobody has yet hacked or decoded?
Yeah.
Like it could talk to other AIs without now, like it's easy to like let your brain go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the difference here, and this is why this is important to this conversation of safety and all this kind of stuff, is that we are now at a place where, like when I was a church online pastor, our frustration was we had dreams for what we wanted to do with the technology, and we were waiting for technology and we still do it today. We're waiting for technology to get up to speed to match what we want to do, right? We have to hack it together with duct tape and just make things like a Rube Goldberg machine, right? We need to actually make it happen, have concessions to do what we want with AI. Today, AI is showing that technology is ahead of what we actually want or can do. And so conceive of that it's even a possibility. So we used to be here and technology was catching up. We're at the point where the technology we're creating is ahead of us and we need to catch up. And so that changes a lot of things. Now, the CEO of Microsoft, Satya, has talked about the difference that he thinks about this time around of birth of AI in this form. He says he's optimistic because the hard questions are coming up much earlier than before. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to cut you off, but what do you mean this time around?
With AI.
To give context to
that. Yeah, sure. He was talking about like with the internet, with social media, with other technologies where it might have some unintended consequences that are dangerous and harmful, right? We understand, but there's these big studies that have talked about how Instagram is harmful for self images of young girls and women, right? And it causes anxiety and the FOMO and all that kind of stuff. And so it's a little bit too late, right? Whole generations have been affected by this technology that we as humans have created. And what he's saying is the difference with AI is these hard questions are being birthed at the beginning, much earlier, being challenged much earlier than we had with other rounds of technology and innovation. And so he's optimistic that, hey, at least now we're in a better position than we were last time. We've learned a little bit from history. And so we're trying to grapple it. And you'll see, I think, more and more conversations about AI across all workplaces, only because this technology, like the web, like social, is so pervasive. It's not applicable only to one vertical industry, one segment, one demographic, etc. It's applicable to almost anyone that uses language, that uses media across all industries. And so anyway, that's one of the reasons why I think the hard questions like this today with our community of ministry leaders need to happen. Every single organization needs an AI policy. If your ministry, your church is not using it, if you think you're not using it, if you as a leader are not using it, your people are. Yeah. And there's implications, legal implications, ethical implications, moral implications. So you need to talk about it, and you need an AI policy, and it's going to be a living document that's going to evolve over time. But this is one of the largest questions that we have that we need to solve in the ministry space in particular, because we work with sensitive data, we work with people. It's really important. And one of the things that I'm working with an organization called Glue is to start to convene those conversations across ecumenical lines to have these questions of what are the ethics of AI in ministry, in church work, in counseling and care. And so that we are hopefully going to pull voices from all the different corners of the church to start to have those conversations. So anyway, that to me, I think is really important. I'm glad we're talking about it today.
Just want to quickly jump in before we move forward to remind you to ask questions. You can use the Q&A button at any time during this webinar to ask your questions. One of our experts will be live and will be answering your questions on the chat as we go along. So make sure you ask your questions or share your comments, your feedback, whatever you like to share with us. Please don't hold back. Keep asking those questions because we love to hear from you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I just wanted to jump in there and just give a perspective of some of our audiences who may be a little bit now scared, okay, so are we saying, should I use AI or not, Yeah. So I just want to give two perspectives, something that I've been talking about even with social media, years ago when we started and had same questions, right? So with the church, there's always two sides. One, the church has things that are public. There is no privacy concern to it. In fact, there shouldn't be any privacy to it because it's public. The Bible is public. The gospel is public. The good news is public. And we need to go all out and be as public as we can. That's one part of the role of the church. That's what God wanted us to be. And that's the Great Commission in itself, to go all out, right? So so that side, there is really no concern or scariness or anything that to be afraid of at that point. But the other side of the church is, for lack of any other visualization, talking about the funnel, just as the open side is at the top of the funnel. And then as you come down, then that is where relationships come in place. That is where engagement come in place. That is where human equations come in place. And when that starts playing, that is where, as a church, we need to be a little more sensitive, a little more holding back, a little more concerned or a little more sensitive about privacy and so on. So this is the same conversation we've had with social media or any other technology tool in the past, just that AI is, like Kenny said, it's way ahead of all those things and going very fast. But at the same time, I think as a church, we need to be aware that we need to deploy it in certain areas, not deploy it in certain areas. And going back to Kenny's analogy of an assistant. So here is an assistant who never takes a break, who never goes on leave, never falls sick. And here is a fantastic, brainy, smart, assistant with you. Now, how you deploy that assistant, what kind of job you give them is up to you. Now, the assistant can be crazy. He goes and breaks something because they're new. They have no idea what they're doing, right? Or they become too smart and they take over the world. Now, that is possible, but that depends on how you are going to use that assistant. So basically, just wanted to address that concern of some of the people who may be starting to get scared. But Kenny, I want to go back to a model that we discussed before we started chatting in our pre-recording. I love that model. Can you quickly talk us through the follow model, and then I want to hear some thoughts from Nick before we move to the next part.
In our world, we talk about FOMO, fear of missing out. I think a lot of the conversations that we enter into today, last couple of months that I've been in, is driven by something else called FOLO. I think FOLO is the new word of 2023 and beyond, and that is the fear of looming obsolescence. The fear of that AI is going to replace you and me and maybe even humanity itself, right? That fear is driven in the headlines, and it's in all the science fiction and the movies and the books, et cetera, that it's human versus the machine and the machine's going to win. Terminator, all those types of things. Now, I think there's something helpful that a New York Times columnist and author, Kevin Roose, he wrote a good book. And in the book, he talks about 3 types of work that he thinks are safe from AI replacement. Now, I don't know if I'm fully aligned with his thinking on this, but I think it's a good discussion point to really bring back to your ministry teams and really have a discussion of, from the lens of what we do as a church, what are the things that are in this category? So the first thing is work that AI can't do, things that are surprising, because AI is based on machine learning, pattern recognition, processes, systems, things that are irregular, chaotic, things that are human, physical, atom-based, in-person, things that are hard to codify into a standard operating procedure is safe from AI. So can you double down on doing things that just can't be replaced by automation and other machine things that can work? The other one is social things that fulfill your emotional needs, things that are mental, internal, that are experiential. You might think of these things in terms of being artisanal experiences, things that are not mass replicated, things, right? You want to scale things that you can't scale, basically. And so things that are social with interaction, that are live, that is off the cuff, those are the things that actually is helpful for you to think about in terms of ministry. And the last one that Kevin talks about is things that are scarce. So things that are high stakes, that really have low fault tolerance, like you cannot risk this stuff, requires some sort of high level of excellence in terms of execution. So for example, the extreme cases, you would never relegate a conversation with someone who's suicidal in a pastoral care conversation to an AI chatbot, right? You need to have a human in the loop, right? In the US, we joke about the president always carries the bag, the football, which is like the codes for the nuclear codes. You would never relegate that to an C-3PO, R2-D2, an actual robot. However friendly and perfect they seem, you would never relegate that something with high stakes. So there are many things in our ministry aspect that are you have no margin for risk, or it's very low margin for risk, and those are the things that you want to be able to double down on. So those are the 3 types of lenses that I would start to have a discussion. There's no right or wrong answer, but can you start to think of that and rework or maybe reimagine some of the ministry programs that you're doing right now?
I think there are right or wrong answers. I'll disagree with you there. I mean, if you're relying on AI to to disciple somebody, it's going to miss today. But that assistant that you're training over time eventually becomes a full-blown seminary degreed, pastor, theologian, and then takes your job. So I'm just kind of making a joke there because it is a little bit of a tense subject. I think I've been thinking about this a lot, and I've been talking with my kids about it a lot, actually. we are mind, body, body, soul, and spirit. And AI is not spirit led. And I think another way to think about it is wisdom. Human beings have wisdom and heavenly, godly wisdom. James talks about if anybody lacks wisdom, let him ask for it, and it will be given to him. In a ministry context, those things that we should not rely on AI for are those things that require, I think, godly wisdom. Now, there was an article in the Herald on Monday that reported about an AI church sermon that happened over the weekend. 98% of the service was conducted by AI. It talks about the AI led, the welcome, it did the preaching, it led in worship, and people reported that it was like soulless. Well, of course it is. It's a machine. This is an interesting article to read if anybody gets the chance. But those things can be mimicked, and it'll get better at mimicking human. And there's all kinds of movies that are already out about that kind of stuff. But like mimicking is not the same as wisdom. I think that's a good thing to keep in mind moving forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, I will just push back. And I feel like we should have a whole other session and a whole other day to talk about this stuff, Nick. I will say, though, the question in my mind is not that replacement. You always need a human in the loop. But can God use a content to help your spirituality? AI itself might not have humanity and spirituality, but can an AI-generated sermon actually bring you to Christ?
For sure. The AI-generated sermon is likely pretty good because, like I've said for years, our problem in the church is not a lack of content. My pastor in Bozeman, Montana, it's very good, by the way. I'm not knocking him at all. But I've told him to his face, people aren't coming for the content. They're not coming to church on a Sunday morning for content. I can get content anywhere and a lot better preachers, frankly. And even past preachers. Like I can go listen to Spurgeon or whoever if I'm reformed. So it's not a content issue. People are coming for relationship, and they're coming for like that engagement and that connection. And again, it's back to loneliness. And I just think that anything that separates us from our Father, Heavenly Father, through pride and replacement of God, that's very, very dangerous.
Yeah.
And I'm an early adopter, by the way. Like for those that don't know me well, like I'm first in on all this stuff, and I've been using AI tools a long time.
But I will say that it's just like I'm old. I'm about to die soon. You guys are probably a little bit closer to me too. But we all lived in a world where we knew the world without the iPhone, right? My kids don't know the world without the iPhone, basically, right? Mm-hmm. And so the same thing. There's a generation that's coming up that will not know a world without humanoids, without R2-D2 and C-3PO, but much better than them. It's kind of weird if you think about it now that, man, Star Wars is so much in the future and AI and technology hasn't evolved that quickly. What happened? It stopped innovating for Star Wars. So the question is and it's happening in other cultures like Japan, like people are actually having relationships with robots, right? And there's AI apps where I think there's a man that wanted to marry his AI chat friend, right? His girlfriend. And so there are things there that we need to wrestle with in the church of just like, I think it's like as a church online pastor, you have to deconstruct what actually is a church service. What is it physicality that actually makes a community or not? When does it matter? When it does it not matter? It's not binary. It's not all or nothing in all these things. And I think the same thing, whether it's for preaching sermons, for counseling, for any application, it's not binary. And it's our job now in this moment for the future to really start to deconstruct and really understand what is the core part of why I go to a church, right? So if it's not for content, is it for relationships? Because you sit in the same pews and you say only superficial things to the people next to you. It doesn't mean that you have deep relationships with them, right? So what is it about experiences, etc.? So it's like the Kevin Roos dynamics of, is it scarce? Is it unpredictable? All those things, I think, help tease out the deconstruction of what actually matters for things that we've just assumed that it's all together at once, that it's all required. and for us to have these conversations, especially with respect to technology, relationships, automation, simulation.
I think you're right about it being non-binary. And on the content comment, by the way, I do want to alter that a little bit, because like I could plagiarize a sermon by having ChatGPT write it, and I would call that plagiarism and presenting it as my own. Or if I craft a sermon for a Sunday morning, whether it's delivered online or in person, like I agree with you about that. I don't think church is just a physicality thing. The wisdom and like the spirit-led nature of it, God knows what he wants to say through me, and Mark Batterson has this prayer, like, God, show me what I can do to accomplish what you want done today, and that I think is an element that we should never lose in ministry.
Yeah.
Amen.
Well, gentlemen, I think this discussion can go on and on in various directions. It's so exciting. There's so much to talk about. And these are some of the really practical questions that I think our audience have in mind as leaders listen to this. I think they're starting to think about this in various dimensions. So before I go into the next closing part, where I want to really talk about getting started, because when we designed this, I wanted to have the getting started towards the end, because I knew that AI is such a big subject that you go all over the place, and then you kind of filter in on the practical aspects of it. So before I get on that, just one more question to both of you is from really practical perspective. Nick, I'll start with you. What can ministries do to ensure that they're not having any endangering steps that are being taken right now, because regulations are evolving, right? And this whole technology is evolving, and we are all learning in this process. So as of now, as of today, when people take the steps, what is that maybe one thing or two things that they can do? I know Kenny mentioned a few, but I just want to hear from your thoughts, and just leave people with like maybe 2 or 3 practical things. Nick.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. I'm glad you brought it up. And my reaction to that is, the last company I was at was a marketing technology software company. So we were, 300 employees, multinational. We were serving the biggest companies in the world: Google, Zoom, Zillow, LinkedIn. All these big telecoms, all kinds of stuff. Lots of insurance companies. We had to have certifications and safeguards in place for things like HIPAA information, personally identifiable information, and in a ministry context, in areas of the world where security is very important. At this point today, I am 100% against uploading data into any type of tool. Even a spreadsheet. People are being very cavalier with some of this data that I think is a security risk, but especially an AI database. I would never put something that has name, personally identifiable information, address, where somebody could be found. Like, you don't want to be the source of that exposure. There's ways to, if there's some reason why I need like machine learning in order to process large quantities of data, then you have to proxy it offline. Like, you have to strip that stuff out and make it kind of proxy data sets. Don't ever put just that raw data into an AI.
Thank you.
It's asking for trouble.
Yeah, absolute words of wisdom, because you could get as excited with this stuff, and many of our audiences, leaders who are listening to us, are from very sensitive locations. So it's important for us to be sensitive. Awesome. Kenny?
Yeah, I think it's just you need to have these conversations. There's no clear-cut answers right now, and I wrote an article with Carrie Newhoff where we started to ask a couple of leading questions that you need to have with your staff and with your peers. And I think we're so early enough in this technology boom that the AI will adapt and change, and the market forces that require privacy and safety, et cetera, hopefully will impact how these things are done. So, for example, ChatGPT recently just put out privacy controls where you can toggle it and it will delete your personal data. It won't save your stuff. Now it keeps it actually for 30 days. So I still don't recommend that you let them do that. But you're seeing the market forces make positive impact into what is consumer first. And so it is this tension that we're seeing that's playing out. We don't know who's going to win. Also, I don't think everyone thinks ChatGPT is the far winner right now. It definitely will not necessarily be like that 5 years from now, right? And so first market advantage is not always the one that keeps the lead. And so it's going to be very interesting to see what comes out and evolves in that very question that you're asking. But to me, the number one thing that you can do is to find appreciation for it. You don't need to master it. You don't need to use it yourself, but you need to appreciate it, what it is and what it is not. And the only way to do is to become literate in it and to talk to peers. I don't know how much I can underscore, highlight, bold it, put flashing lights around that. You need to keep the conversation open and keep on asking people, how are you using it? What are you seeing? What are you seeing as a risk? And what are you seeing as an upside? You have to ask those both questions at the same time.
I just want to double click on that and say yes and amen, even if you're 100% against it. Yes, so I don't think any of us are, but if you're listening to this and you're like, this is, absolutely wrong, you should still have those conversations and understand what it is not. If for nothing else, to like dismantle it or it's just have a proper understanding of your enemy. I guess
even apologetics, right? In apologetics, you have to understand what the other side is. You have to appreciate and really empathetically see their point of view before you can actually understand how you can respond. And so I think conversations are the only way that we can do this.
Another quick reminder before we move forward for you to ask your questions using the Q&A section. Please use the Q&A tab to ask questions. And even if you don't have a question, you want to share your comment, your thought, your feedback, or even an additional information that you want to share related to what you've heard from the expert so far, please feel free to do that. We want to engage with you. We want to talk to you. We want to hear from you. There is a live expert in case you have a question who will take your question, who will answer your question, and make sure you get all your questions answered. So before we wrap up, I want to get your closing thoughts and also tell people how they can connect with you and learn more from you. So first, closing thoughts from you, Kenny.
Yeah, I'm just encouraged by so many people that have showed up for this, because I think, again, conversations are the key to learning when you are at an innovation front. And that's what we are living through right now. Again, the biggest advice I can give you is if you think and frame AI as a seminary intern, as an assistant that you have a relationship with, and it never is cranky. It always wants to do whatever you want to do. No matter how many tasks you feed it, it will always say, great, boss, let's do more, right? And so take that relationship and start to think through any task that you want to give it. I think the related one is we always start with the WIFM, the what's in it for me. So start to use AI experimentally, not just for your work, but try to do something that's of personal interest to you. Like, I know Nachi's a great cook, so it might be just asking for recipes in this genre of food, or maybe a different type of dessert, right? So do things that are serving your WIFM, the what's in it for me first. That way you can see the possibilities and apply it to your work. And again, I have a community that we started, AIforChurchLeaders.com. Just encourage everybody to be a part of it. We have several thousand people and hundreds of people joining every week. It's a Facebook group. We have online events and webinars, etc. You can find out more information and connect with me at AIforChurchLeaders.com.
Yeah, I'm part of the community. Highly encourage everyone to check it out. Nick, any closing thoughts, and also how people can learn more about you?
I think in a lot of areas of my life, I think about where is everybody going? And then I look for opportunities in the opposite direction. Everybody's going to AI right now. And I'm not saying move away from it. What I'm saying is there's a lot of lazy people out there. So whether it's in ministry or marketing or whatever field you're in, as AI use becomes ubiquitous, and it will, be careful not to just kind of like follow along AI can actually, as I've been using it to help me like craft content, marketing, headlines, like things like this in a different direction. So I'm asking it to literally think against the crowd. And it's been just interesting, some of the results that I've gotten. So explore with these tools. I think there's been great comment that's presented today. Kenny, I mean, thank you so much for joining us. And Nachi, you've been an incredible host as always in this conversation, as well as the content you provided. These are good things. I would echo what you guys have said, like encourage people to use it. I'm just trying to think about like, how do I stand out? I'm a marketer at heart. And if I'm speaking and acting and talking like everybody else, then I'm just part of the noise. Like I really want to take kind of a different approach. And I think that I'm thinking about how AI can help me do that. And I think our ministry teams should do the same, because we're, especially in digital ministry, where you're trying to stand out from the digital noise and the clutter that just kind of is all the same drum. We've got a different call, a different message to share with people.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's the best way for people to connect with you, Nick?
Oh, I'm on all the things. Nick Runyon. You'll either find me or some criminal in West Virginia, but it's the non-criminal one. That's me.
And we will link to some of these in the show notes, and also Kenny's group as well. Gentlemen, what a joy. Thank you so much. This has been incredible, just listening and gleaning all the wisdom from both of you. Thank you so much. Appreciate both of you and your friendship and your love for the Lord and ministry and all the ministry leaders. Thank you for taking your time to be here. On behalf of MII, on behalf of David, on behalf of all our audience, I just want to say thank you.